I stepped on a man's face this morning. I did not mean to. There were too many bodies beneath my feet. The sand was slick, and when I looked down, his eyes were open. Flies had already gathered at the corners. His mouth was full of dust and blood. His teeth were broken. One of them lay loose against his tongue. This is what victory looks like. My name is Nicias, son of Lysander. I am 29 years old, and yesterday I was only a potter. My hands were shaped by clay and fire. Today, they are stiff with dried blood that does not belong to me. I know now how warm another man's life feels when it runs across your fingers. We had watched the Persians from the hills. For days, their ships covered the shoreline like a second horizon. The masts stood like a forest. Their tents spread across the plain in ordered rows, banners snapping in the wind. Even from the high ground, we could see how many they were, more than we could count, without losing track. They looked endless. At night, their fires glowed along the shore. We lay awake on the rocky ground above them, listening, hammering, shouting, horses shifting. Some men whispered about numbers, others spoke of home. No one spoke of fear, but it moved through the camp like cold air. We were 10,000 citizens, not soldiers, men who argued in the agora about grain prices and broken tools, men who had never stood in a killing line before. We had bought our own armor. Some of it did not fit well. My cuirass rubs my ribs raw. My helmet presses against my temples even now. I can still smell the bronze and sweat inside it. The shield is the heaviest truth a man carries. Wood beneath bronze. It rests on the forearm, but its true burden lies in the shoulder. It drags, it burns, and you cannot lower it, because the man beside you depends on its edge to guard his life. When the order came, there was no speech about glory, only a signal. We tightened our ranks. The line stretched across the slope. I could feel Philon's shoulder touching mine. His breath was fast. He muttered the names of his daughters under his breath, as if counting them would keep him alive. We moved as one body down the hill. The ground was uneven. Stones shifted under sandals. Bronze struck bronze in nervous rhythm. No one wanted to be the first to break formation. The sun was already high. Sweat pooled beneath my helmet before we even reached the flat ground. It ran into my eyes and tasted of salt and iron. Then we began to run. 8 stadia. You do not think during that run. You count steps. You fight the weight of armor. Your lungs tear at your chest. The earth pounds under your sandals. The line wavers, but does not break. Then the arrows came, a dark shimmer against the light, then impact. They struck the shields with hard cracks. One arrow pierced the rim of my shield and lodged there, quivering. Another struck the man behind me in the thigh. He screamed once, then kept running. There was nowhere to fall. The sound of arrows is worse than the sight. A slicing hiss, growing louder until it becomes impact. We did not slow. The first impact with their line was not a clash of heroes. It was a collision of weight. My shield smashed into woven wicker. My spear drove forward. I felt resistance, then the sickening give of flesh. Warmth ran across my hand. The Persian before me wore lighter armor. His eyes were wide, with something between anger and surprise. He tried to thrust at me with a curved blade. It scraped along my shield and cut into the wood. I leaned forward with all my strength. The man behind me pressed into my spine. The entire line became a single muscle. Push, lean, breathe. strike. The air filled with dust and screams. I smelled sweat, leather, blood, and something sharp like fear itself. In the center, we began to give ground. I could not see it clearly, but I felt the shift. The pressure from ahead grew stronger. The men in the middle were being forced back. Someone shouted that we were surrounded. Panic spreads faster than any wound. For a heartbeat, the line rippled. If it tore, we would be cut apart in moments. I thought of my wife then, not in poetry, only in the simple fact that she would not know how I died. We pushed harder. Our wings held. On the flanks, our line was deeper and heavier. I felt the enemy's pressure weaken. The men before me began to look sideways, searching for space. Their formation loosened. Then it happened. They turned. A line that turns is already defeated. We drove into their backs. The field shifted from ordered lines to scattered knots of men. Some threw down shields. Some tried to rally. Most ran, near the marsh. Bodies tangled. Men slipped and were trampled. Armor dragged some into mud, where they drowned face down, arms twitching. At the shoreline, chaos. Ships scraping against sand. Sailors shouting, men climbing over one another to reach planks. I killed again there. A young soldier, barely grown, dropped his weapon and tried to pull an arrow from his leg. He looked at me as if asking for mercy, but mercy does not exist in a charge. The men behind me were still moving forward. If I stopped, I would fall. So I drove the spear down. It broke, on bone. When it ended without warning. The noise stopped. The shouting faded into scattered cries of the wounded. My arms trembled uncontrollably. My ears rang. My mouth tasted of metal. I searched for Phylon. I found him near where the center had bent. An arrow had entered beneath his raised arm, where the shield leaves a narrow gap, a space no wider than a hand, small enough for death. He had fallen backward, eyes open to the sky. His fingers were still locked around the grip of his shield. They say fewer than 200 of us died. The number does not matter when you know their faces. We gathered the bodies of our own. We burned what we could. Smoke rose into the clean blue sky as if nothing had happened. They say we defeated the great king. Perhaps. But as I stand here, among the flies and broken spears, I understand something else. We were close to breaking. If our wings had not held, if one section had fled, if one moment of fear had spread too far, this field would belong to them. Victory is not bright. It is heavy. Heavy in the arms, heavy in the lungs, heavy in the memory of the first face you stepped on, because there was nowhere else to put your foot. The Persians can bleed, but so can we. And next time, there may be more of them.
The Battle of Marathon took place in 490 BC during the first Persian invasion of Greece. The Persian king Darius I sent an expeditionary force across the Aegean Sea to punish Athens and Eretria for supporting the earlier Ionian revolt. The Persian army, led by Datis and Artaphernes, first destroyed Eretria and then landed on the plain of Marathon, approximately 40 kilometers from Athens. The Athenians, joined by around 1,000 Plataean allies, marched out to confront them. In total, the Greek force likely numbered close to 10,000 heavily armed hoplites. The Persian army was probably larger, although exact numbers remain debated among historians. Estimates range from 20 to 25,000 soldiers, possibly more. Persian forces relied heavily on light infantry and archers and may have had cavalry present, though it is unclear whether the cavalry was fully engaged during the decisive clash. The Athenian army was commanded by Miltiades, one of 10 elected generals. According to Herodotus, Miltiades convinced his fellow commanders to attack rather than remain on the defensive. In a bold maneuver, the Greeks advanced rapidly across the plain to reduce the effectiveness of Persian archery. The Greek phalanx formation was arranged with reinforced wings and a comparatively thinner center. During the battle, the Persian forces pushed back the Greek center, but the stronger Greek flanks successfully enveloped the Persian wings. Once the Persian line collapsed, many soldiers retreated toward their ships. Fighting continued near the shoreline, and several Persian vessels were captured. Ancient sources claim that approximately 6,400 Persians were killed, while the Athenians lost 192 men and the Plataeans 11. These numbers may not be exact, but the disparity reflects the scale of the Greek victory. After the battle, the Persian fleet attempted to sail directly to Athens. The Athenian army, however, quickly marched back to defend the city. When the Persians arrived, they found the defenders already in position and withdrew. The victory at Marathon was significant. It demonstrated that the Persian Empire was not invincible and strengthened Athenian confidence and influence in the Greek world. However, it did not end the conflict. A decade later, Darius's son Xerxes would launch a far larger invasion, leading to the battles of Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea. Marathon was not the end of the war. It was the beginning.